average. Welcome to night 3 of our spine-tingling 13 Nights of Halloween series. This season, we're diving into the realm of horror by pitting remakes against their original counterparts to see how they fare in the ultimate battle of frights. Tonight, we're delving into the hauntingly beautiful and deeply unsettling world of the 2018 remake of Suspiria. We're thrilled to be joined by David from the Journey with the Cinephile podcast, whose expertise and passion for horror films will illuminate our discussion.
Well, first off, thank you for having me and allowing me to kind of select this duo of movies here, just because it's definitely a couple of them that kind of came late to them. Not necessarily this one, but the original one that we'll get to at a later time here. But yeah, outside of that, this has been, I originally started doing like written reviews. And when I started getting into podcasts and realizing that this is kind of things that like people were doing out there, it kind of was one of those things where I'm like, you know what, maybe this is the next step for what I'm doing here, and allowed me to kind of meet great people, including you guys here and everything like that. And to kind of, it also opened up my eyes to a lot of different movies that I necessarily didn't have growing up too.
Yeah, I think we actually connected through last night. We had Ricky from the nightclub, and we connected through the nightclub's Discord server. Yes. But it's just a great community to get to know each other and connect. So I definitely agree with that. Definitely agree. So together, we'll unravel the eerie elegance and psychological depths that is this modern retelling. For a film as hauntingly atmospheric as the 2018 remake of Suspiria, we need a cocktail that reflects its rich, complex, and darkly enchanting essence. So, keeping in theme with our 13 Nights of Halloween, we have a cocktail pairing for tonight. That cocktail pairing is the Crimson Dance, a cocktail that captures the mystique and elegance for its modern horror masterpiece. Head over to our Instagram to get that recipe and mix it before you watch the movie. And remember, we want you to be a part of this fright fest. Watch along with us. Share your thoughts and reviews. We have a handy little link in our Instagram bio. I know, link in bio is outdated, but we're still doing it. Where you can submit your scores the exact same way that we do. Whether you're a fan of the originals or prefer the remakes, we want to hear what you think. We'll be tallying up the scores, tagging everyone who submits a review and provides a valid tag to see how these head-to-head scores play out. When Halloween rolls past and we're stuck in the gray despair of days until next Halloween, we'll post the winners, the original or the remake. So dim the lights, grab your cocktail, and prepare to be mesmerized as we explore the dark artistry and chilling narrative of Suspiria. Get ready for an evening of captivating horror that promises to leave you spellbound. So, who was a first viewing of this?
First time.
First time? Okay. Yeah, I thought this was your second.
Oh, no. Never seen it before. No.
This was the first time for me.
This was my third time. I had watched it when it came out to the theater. I have this like great little one that I'm a member at that is actually independent. So they get a lot of like, they'll do a lot of like remasters and stuff, and they'll bring a lot of like actual film prints to what they're doing. And then this one they actually got during its original run. And then I was part of another podcast series a couple summers ago, and this was one of the selections for that one in the running where they're trying to find like the best horror movies of each year. And they were running through the 2010s for that one. And then my wife actually had watched it with me that time, and then she was kind of intrigued because she didn't really know what she had saw the first time around. So then she actually watched this one again with me to see how she kind of felt with it.
Okay. Yep. So this was my first time, and this was one. So I put Suspiria on this list of remakes versus the originals because anybody who is a fan of classic 70s, 80s horror knows Dario Argento, knows Suspiria. I still hadn't seen the movie. I'd seen other Argento films because Suspiria was this lofty thing that everybody talked about as this masterpiece that I was hesitant to watch it because I was worried it wouldn't live up to the talk. Yeah. So I put it off, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to put it on 13 Nights of Halloween list, and it'll force me to watch it. So I watched this 2018 version, And the next day I needed to watch the original. And we'll get into why that. And my wife was the same way. So she watched the original with me. We're both checked in for about 3/4 of the film. Mm-hmm. But then we both were like, I want to see the original. I want to see where these ideas came from. And we'll dive into more about what I thought as we go. So this film, the 2018 Suspiria, is directed by Luca. I'm going to do my best here. Guadagnino. I know he's pretty popular. Yeah. He's known for visually stunning films like Call Me By Your Name. This reimagining of Dario Argento's 1977 classic takes an ambitious approach. The film features a stellar cast including Dakota Johnson as Susie Banyan, Tilda Swinton in 3 roles, Mia Goth as Sarah, and Chloe Grace Moretz as Patricia. The haunting score is composed by Tom York of Radiohead, adding a nice little touch to the film. It is set in Berlin in 1977. The plot follows young American dancer Susie Banyan, who arrives at the prestigious Marcos Dance Academy, an elite but secretive school led by enigmatic Madame Blanc. As Susie rises through the ranks, she befriends fellow dancer Sarah and uncovers the Academy's dark and sinister secrets. Beneath the surface of this renowned institution lies a, spoiler alert, coven of witches who wield a terrifying power over their students. The narrative unfolds through a series of disturbing events, including the mysterious disappearance of dancer Patricia, who has begun to suspect the true nature of the Academy. As Susie becomes more deeply entangled with the coven, she experiences visions and undergoes a dramatic transformation. The tension escalates towards a shocking and gruesome climax where the true extent of the witch's power is revealed. So, Jonathan, you're going to kick us off. What did you think of the story?
Okay, so if you know anything about me by now, you know that I'm not a fan of like dance film stuff, right? So just you know, I hate Grease.
Because
I do not like Dirty Dancing.
We just did Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, just so not my thing. But then I saw this dude, and this was like a whole other beast. Like I was kind of blown out, man. Like, oh my god, things went in a way that I did not expect them to go. At a certain point, it kind of alludes to things, you kind of catch on, but then still at the end, still not what you thought was going to be. I was like, holy crap crackers, this is awesome. It's like, seriously, like, no, this, I seriously, I'm riding high on this sucker, dude, with a 5, man, with combination of it being set as kind of like a time place kind of thing with Germany and being post Cold War. You've got the wall right there. What looks like, I'm assuming, is the Berlin Wall next to the Dance Academy. Yeah, so you still got East-West Germany. People got a lot of freedom, can still do this and that over here. Other side, repressed, restricted, can't do much of nothing. It's awful, and God, just like then you've got your main character, Susie, some Mennonite girl from Ohio coming out of nowhere out here to Europe after her mom dies. And like, as you learn more in the story, like, there's some kind of shame with her, the brother doesn't like her kind of thing, abuse and whatnot. And then just like her eagerness and like getting so jumped up into this academy out of nowhere and trying to prove herself, seems like, and the crazy cast of what's going on with the witch coven and just how everything plays out. Dude, I just thought this was super, super cool. I don't know what else to really say, man. This was such a good story, in my opinion, with like the intrigue and mystery with like Dr. Kemper, one of Tilda Swinton's roles, trying to investigate what's going on with Patricia since she goes missing, and then, Sarah kind of being like led on to like and giving the hint of what's going on by the doctor and things that Patricia already said. And like, girls going missing and cops getting involved and nothing really happening and wondering what's going on. And just wondering how far the story is going to go and what's really going to get down in the nitty gritty with what's going on. I'm like jumbling my own words, dude. Like, I really, really like the story for this one. Super rocking. So, Tim, shatter all our illusions here.
I like hearing your enthusiasm. Yeah. So, hanging us down. This is hard. This was really hard. I didn't care for at least an hour of this film. And I thought it could have been completely cut from the story and made zero impact on how I felt. It might have made me enjoy this film a little bit more. And you mentioned the specific character that I am thinking of, and that is the character of Kemperer.
Yes. Dude, holy cow.
I feel like it was injected into the film to bring a political awareness of the time that doesn't really elevate the story whatsoever. And in the end, he's brought in we hear the Coven talking about he can be our witness, but it's not even made clear exactly what he is a witness of. And so when that happens, and I'm like, yes, I see him laying there at the feet of the Coven at the end. And then the next scene we see him, he's in his bed missing his wife. And all of that seems exceedingly distracting from the story of Susie and the Coven. And I get that Patricia goes to him in the beginning, but Mia Goth's character could have discovered all of these things without him in the film. So we talk about, he kind of hints that there's something going on because he read Patricia's journal, and he read Patricia's journal. He thinks something weird is going on. And then he hints that to Mia's character, Sarah. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm really bad. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So he hints to Sarah that there's something going on, hidden rooms within the building. And then we get later Mia sitting there, Sarah's sitting there, and she hears something and goes outside and counts her footsteps. And we could have gone to that with her just realizing she's hearing something that she can't see. It added literally. So when I was going back and doing the cutting clips to make the episode, it adds 45 minutes to an hour to the storyline.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Of Kemperer. And it's just padding. His wife, Ankh, was, yes, I loved it because that's the original actress from Suspiria, but it does nothing more than tug on our heartstrings for a character who's not the driving force of the film. So that is like, I know I'm getting nitpicky, but like,
I'll give you that.
I started it going like, okay, this opening scene with, I'm assuming, because I didn't really catch if it was super clear. This was my first watch, a psychologist and Patricia. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And then the longer I saw Kemperer, the less I realized his story had an impact on what was going on. Yeah. He just became an outside perspective, and kind of, in a way, he is the most sympathetic character in the film to me. He is the one that I feel for the most. I don't feel for Susie all that much. But I just couldn't help but feel that the Kemperer character, if we had taken that out, and I get I'm trying to say this nicely. I feel like his character was completely unnecessary to the way the story unfolded. And while I am okay with some of the sentiments that it brought, I'm not sure it added any value to the story in the end. Specifically the final scene where Susie sits on his bed and tells him about his wife. And yeah, that pulled at my heartstrings, but what's it have to do with anything? So that's my problem. That is where I came in and I was like, okay, this is based on Dario Argento's script, which Dario Argento's script was based on a short writing from an English poet, I believe. So, and that wasn't exactly anything from what I was able to research. It's not exactly the story. He just kind of took the idea of the three mothers from that. So this is a direct story copy of Dario Argento's. So there, I took that into like, okay, it's not super original because it is a copy of that original story. And then I did not care for some of that extra padding. So while I think Susie's story is the main draw here, if we have a 2.5 hour film with 45 minutes that really doesn't matter, I have to question the story a little bit. So this is there. I feel bad starting off this negatively, but I don't. There are some high praise in this. There is some high praise in this film. The story is one of the couple spots in this that I really struggled giving it a good score. Unfortunately for me, I thought the story was just okay. I gave it a 2. So I feel I hate being a bummer, man. But the story really,
Ouchie, bro.
Man, when I went back and I was cutting those clips again, I was like, I really don't care for Kemper even more after seeing the way everything pulls out, like seeing the way everything unfolds. I care for him even less on my rewatch. So that's where I landed, unfortunately. So David, love to hear what you think of the film.
No, but you bring up good points though, because like when at the end of it this time around, I kind of come to the conclusion that I feel like Kemper Things is just kind of a like bookend to everything, because it starts with him, with Patricia coming and talking to him, and then it ends with Susie coming to him, making him forget everything that's happened with like the coven and everything like that. And then we just get the thing that he, sold the summer house now that he's finally given up everything like that. I'm with you though, where it does feel like that's literally what they introduce it early for, is to just kind of have like that 2 things, because especially with how it starts off being like, this is a 6-act story with an epilogue to tell everything that you're doing here. Because I mean, I actually came in closer to like a higher score for this one. There are still story elements that I still have questions about, because like you are right, this is retelling Dario Argento's version of the story, but you're just adding this other thing. For me, what I really love about this one is like giving us the coven's hierarchy, where you see that half of them, or just less than half of them, want to follow Blanc, but there's still this majority that are clinging to Helena Marcos just because they believe that she is like Mother Suspiria, and that she has been either she's incarnate of her, or that she's been ordained to be this one of these 3 mothers. Which I do love how at the end of this, when everything, and they come to like that whole ritual and everything at the end, where it's like, oh no, you do not actually have what you think you do, and you've been doing all this stuff. You've been sacrificing these girls before it's too early, or it's before they're ready to do all this stuff, and ruin everything like that. So I just love that he actually developed different elements of the story for this one and fleshed that out. So I end up coming in with a 4 for my score on this one.
That's totally fair. I do. Now that you point that out, the hierarchy is much clearer in this film, and it's a mythology that I am curious about, even if, I didn't care for other elements of it. I was definitely curious about these 3 mothers, and it actually made me want to go back and watch the Dario Argento trilogy. Yeah. But I've heard the 3rd one is just awful.
Yeah, so. 3rd one's rough. That one, Inferno is wild. I will say that. Inferno is a fun ride.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. We're a little divided. That's okay. Moving on. Jonathan, how do you feel about the character in this film?
Okay. So when it comes to character, like I said, this was such a big punch because I thought I knew what was going to happen, where it was going, and it wasn't. It kind of, sort of, but like really wasn't in this big, huge way. With Susie, this whole image of her being this small Mennonite girl from Ohio, escaping Mennonite Amish life.
Which I want to point out, I don't know if you felt the same way at all. Did Ohio in 1977 look like Ohio in 1945 to anybody else?
It looked Depression-like. It definitely looked like the Depression.
Okay, I live in Ohio, and on my way to my wife's like parents' house, we go like near a Mennonite community, and I don't believe it's built up that much in the last 50 years that it would not look like the Depression like 50 years ago.
Yeah, I caught that on rewatch. I was like, man, this feels like Ohio 1945. But Jonathan,
great point. But just like this girl who, like, you see in certain parts of the movie where, as a child she sees a map and picks a point, Berlin, and decides wants to go there. Mm-hmm. This whole idea of having run away to go see Madame Blanc perform, 3 times and getting in so much trouble for it and always being this problem child. And then, her mother dying and her escaping that whole life to pursue something different and getting there and like being kind of fearful, but hoping to be accepted and hoping to earn this spot and prove that she can do something different despite, how she was treated by her mother. Everything kind of untangles after that with the whole idea of witches and the breakdown of Olga and the slight, the idea and the slight paranoia building in Sarah and trying to build off each other from all of that. Like, Susie was so crazy because as the movie progresses on and on, she gets so swept up so quick and she seems so eager to prove herself to Madame Blanc, and Madame Blanc being just so kind of like enthralled with her, like she can't help herself, so drawn together and finding this sense of acceptance. And then you think that there's this growth going on and then she's getting these gifts from Madame Blanc and all this stuff. And then finding out, or then it turning into later on seeming like everyone in the coven is like going crazy, ha 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 ha. But the intensity between her and Madame Blanc, even from across the table in a restaurant, in that one scene, I think it was like in Act 6 or something. Man, it seems like she finally knows what it is after having, like, you see them in that scene with that telepathic conversation. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh crap, she knows. She's keyed into what's happening with this coven, and it seems like she wants to be able to be part of it. Only then to find out that she is the incarnation of Mother Suspiria. Mm-hmm. And like, just totally blew my mind. I was not expecting that. I was thinking that she was just gonna, like, as her coming into this coven, thinking that she's gonna somehow find a spot in there and be powerful and like take over and like Madame Blanc, kick Mother Marcos out and all that shit. But no, what a twist! Like, holy crap! Totally blew my mind. So that whole arc from being like this little nothing nobody trying to build up, find some fame and be something awesome, and then finding out that she is like one of the 3 mothers, just was so crazy that I gave that such a hard 5 in the arc, dude. So hard, like super rocking. Although with Kemper though, I gotta give him his due though, a little bit as a character for his sense of arc. You are right, definitely was not necessary. All that country house stuff, the travel, he could have been just a small minor part character with like an 1/8 of the time that he had on screen, basically. Yeah.
But was it a beautiful story? Yes. Kemper's story is beautiful. I'm not sure what it has to do with this movie.
Right.
Yep.
But him finally getting that sense of being able to let go of his pain and his feelings about not ever finding his wife, and then being concerned and trying to help Patricia, but then realizing how crazy shit is and trying to get rid of the evidence from Patricia's bags and stuff that was left in his home, and just trying to cover up any connection because of her supposed connection with the RAF, Germany, and all that stuff going on with the heist that was going on with the Lufthansa flight. Now all that was a huge news piece at the time for that country, and then him, like I said, all of that very minor, could have done without, but still was kind of cool. So I just wanted to point out that he had a small bit of arc too, and finally getting that sense of peace at the end, despite the horrors that he unknowingly witnessed.
Yeah,
he did. He did have a small arc. I actually really liked Sarah's arc as well, from being this kind of just, she's all in, kind of taking everything for how she sees it, and then slowly opening her eyes that there might be something going on underneath, and then the tragedy that hits her. I liked that. I felt the opposite way you did about Susie. I felt cheated. So this whole time, on second watch, I'm looking for a moment when she becomes Mother Suspiria. I'm watching for like this whole movie. My first watch, I am expecting that they keep talking about her, building her up as if they are going to do some ceremony, some ritual that will turn her into Mother Suspiria or Mother Marcos. They will turn her into one of those beings. So then when we get to this ceremony, the moment that I felt cheated on the entire film is when she's like, "Oh, I'm Mother Suspiria." And I'm like, what the? No. When?
I would say it's when Mother Marcos tries to chop and kill Madame Blanc.
And
Sacrifice.
then it just happens? Because
then unleashes that incarnation in her? I don't know. I'm assuming.
So after I got online and I was like, okay, who can explain what happened? And all I saw was a bunch of theories. There are some who say that she was born Mother Suspiria and that her drawing those lines to Germany was the mother guiding her to her eventual fate. I felt cheated because I didn't get those clearer clues throughout. I didn't feel it building to like, oh, that makes sense why she's so powerful.
Yep.
I'd be fine with it if that's where it was going. In the end, I feel like it was done just to subvert the expectations of people who saw the original, which I don't want to talk too much about the original. I'm trying to give this one its own merit.
Don't ruin it for me, Tim.
Yeah, I won't. But I felt cheated by the end of this movie. And I think that's where much of my bitterness goes to, is that I'm fine with Dakota Johnson becoming Mother Suspiria at the end. I didn't see that unfold on screen. I saw the Coven preparing her for something, and then turns out she's more powerful than all of them, exploding heads. Poof. So for me, the arc was incredibly underwhelming. I don't think the goal was bad. I think the journey was lacking for me. So like I said, when I watched it again, I'm looking for these moments, and it became a little more clearer where it's not Marcos. Tilda Swinton's character. Is it Marcos?
No.
Oh, that's Marcos is the deformed,
old hag bag, nasty looking
Madame Blanc.
Jabba the Hutt in the
Jabba Baba.
Madame Blanc, yes. Where she says she's feeding her their dreams. Mm-hmm. And so I can see a little bit of how they're feeding into her and how she slowly gets there. It's just a little bit like, I would have liked to see her come into her own maybe a little bit before that scene and demonstrate some power somehow. Because even in that climactic dance ceremony, like I was expecting that was when she was like imbued with the power, that because that dance has a very ritualistic feel to it. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this is when she came into her power, but even on second watch, it's not clear because she's still not sure what happened to Sarah. Mm-hmm. So it's like you said, it is the second Tilda Swinton's head gets like 3/4 chopped off. Yeah. Yeah. All of a sudden she's powerful. So there's just some dots that weren't connected for me. I did think I didn't add this into my score because I think he was a wasted character, but I did think the Doctor's story was good. I thought his arc was good. And in a different movie, I might have teared up at the end about hearing about his wife. I might have shed a tear for that story. In this one, I was like, why are we still watching this guy? And then I actually, Sarah was my favorite character in this film. I don't always like Mia Goth, but I actually think this is one of her best performances. But
have you seen those 3 films that she did, that X series?
I can't wait for Maxine. Yeah, I can't wait.
I haven't seen any of them yet, but they look pretty hardcore.
X was, it's slasher porn.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like it's
wow,
equal parts softcore porn and then slasher.
Jeez. Oh my god!
But It's fun. It's good. I like Ty West's eye. He has an eye for staging scenes. He's very good at that. Pearl is Wizard of Oz with murder, and it's something different. It's unique in a good way, but I'm very curious to where Maxine is going. So,
Mia Goth does some crazy stuff, man. I definitely need to get caught up, I guess, and maybe watch those. I don't know.
Where is she from?
I have no idea.
I think she's British. I think I've looked this up. I think she's British.
Okay, because the Ty West films had me going, is she like that Southern accent is bold. Right. And then this one, I was like, that's a British accent at points. And like, where is this girl from? I did not like Infinity Pool. Not for me.
That one's weird too. That's
it's a bizarre film.
It is.
So David, I didn't give my final score. Again, I'm a 3 on the character arc. Okay. I can see it, but I needed more to relate to it.
I'm actually with you on this one in that it feels like in the beginning that Susie is going to be like our main character, and she's very important to the ending. But I almost feel like this movie, I don't know if it's each of like the chapters that kind of switch where we're kind of following with it. But like, to me, I love that she comes there and she's all meek and she's very just kind of like nervous, wants to make sure that she gets into this academy, and then just so shocked that she becomes like dancing in the lead so quickly and everything like that. And then she kind of gets like a bit of like an arrogance about her, and then she kind of just shifts away from her for like where she almost becomes like a secondary character where we start to follow other people. Mm-hmm. So like I for my score, end up kind of getting raised just because of how we kind of shift that focus, where I do agree, like Mia Goth, I think is my favorite character outside of like just Tilda Swinton killing, 3 different characters in this with how great she can kind of perform all of them. But like when we start following Mia Goth as Sarah, where she, like you said, is like, no, like, this isn't what's happening. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm going to go back. Like, it's fine, whatever. And then she ends up just seeing little things where she's like, wait a minute, that's not adding up. And then finds like that there is this whole secret building underneath what they have, like this whole catacombs thing. So for me, I end up coming in with a 5 just because there's so many different characters that have interesting arcs that I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give credit to everybody that kind of has this type of thing. And I mean, I also have read, and I do believe, I kind of go into the thing that Susie has been Mother Suspiria since the beginning. But I do think it's when they actually try to kill Blanc that it really just kind of fully awakens everything as she kind of went down there. And the other thing I was going to say too with like the dances, I almost feel like all of them are rituals of sorts, because every time they actually show a more extended scene, somebody gets hurt and somebody just gets like attacked and everything like that. And I just love how they incorporate that into the story, where it's like she's so powerful even when she's doing her audition that it's like hurting Olga for speaking out against the teachers and everything. So I do love that aspect of it as well.
I was going to say, do we want to bring up the Olga dancing now?
No, we got to wait for that. Okay, we got to wait for that
because that scene was the moment that I was like, I was checked in. I was like, oh.
But I will say, I agree with David. I think you're right. I think maybe she was Mother Superiorum from the beginning, just wasn't able to fully express.
Right.
But I looked at the wiki, and it seems like maybe like at the point when Susie renounces her own, I guess Susie's mother wasn't dead yet. It was on her deathbed. When she renounces her mother, that's when it fully sets off. She renounces her mother, and then Marco's chopped, and then boom, then it all sets off. I completely
forgot about that. I think, that makes sense. I think
that's what it is. I think what they're saying here.
I forgot about that because the connection with her mother wasn't established as being that strong to begin with. Right. So, sorry. We got some flashbacks of rural Ohio circa 1945. But yes, that does make sense in the way the ending unfolds, because I remember the Marcos sitting there, renounce your real mother.
Yep.
So on to the music and sound design. So this one, we're actually mostly in agreement on this one, but Jonathan, go ahead.
So I was surprised to find out that Tom York was the one who did the composing for this film.
Yeah, first time.
I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, like so much hate, but I'm not a Radiohead fan. not really a Tom York fan. A lot of my buddies I grew up with, they are so all about some Radiohead, but just, it was too downtone in the wrong way for me. I give credit. There's some cool songs, whatever, good writing, but just it didn't work for me.
Yep.
But this, holy crap, dude, like this is pretty epic. So if this is his first time composing for a soundtrack, dude knocked it out of the water.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like the music really accented everything that was going on with the dance and the fierceness of movement and transitions between scenes and everything. It all came together really, really well and had such a nice blend that I'm kicking it on a 4. So I think that's a pretty solid place to be. I mean, even with some of the stuff with the sound design, sounds of the farm, traveling in, that part of Berlin and everything just still had a nice kind of presence versus the small parts of silence where it's really quiet and you don't have much going on.
Yes.
Especially in those moments of discovery that you see in different parts of the film. I was on the verge of going 5 with it. I was like so close, but I don't want to push that stuff. I push that stuff much because it's Tom York, but I still give the man a heck of a lot of credit. And 4.
I'm kind of glad you didn't go 5 because I wouldn't know how to respond. Because I always say that like 5 is that iconic sound. 5 is Jaws. 5 is Psycho. 5 is Star Wars. The sound you can recognize. I can't recognize any of the songs that were in this movie, but none of them were distracting. They didn't take me out of the moment. They weren't like, ooh, that's a poor choice. I thought they fit the scenes quite well. And for the first time composing, he did an excellent job. Where I was especially impressed was the sound design. That dancing sounds visceral, like their feet hitting that floor. And I don't know how many people are aware that dance floors are usually kind of cushy and they make that louder, almost like gymnastics floors. So that's why we get that sound from it. But it sounds so good. And just some of the way this could also go in a direction, but it was clearly a sound choice of having audio overlay a scene that it was not filmed. So we have a conversation of the coven talking about Susie, but we're watching the coven like out to dinner. And so it's a separate conversation from a different time overlaying something else that we are seeing. Yeah. And I thought that was really unique. That was really different. And I appreciated that element of it. I thought that was very clever. I thought that was different. The music didn't really do much for me, but the sound design was enough that I gave it a 4.
Kick ass. Oh,
yeah. I'm actually coming in, I think, a little bit lower, but that's not necessarily like a knock on anything here. I think that the music, for me, a lot of times I don't notice a score unless it's, like you said, more of an iconic one. But if it doesn't take me out of it, I'm usually like, okay, that's all I'm asking for. Like, fit the atmosphere. Don't jar me with something unless it's going to just like knock me like out of my chair. But sound design is what I really love about it. Like you guys have been saying, is like the dancing stuff is. It feels like we're actually watching these people do this dance and everything like that. And another thing too with the sound design, I also love another scene that was great is when the coven is voting, but we're not actually seeing them like around a table or like actually doing something. We're literally watching these people just like, oh, these people are reading a magazine. These people are like preparing a meal. These people are doing their own little things. But you know that at some point they were like sitting down and talking about this and actually like listening back and forth to each other. But I love how you can overlay this sound and to see them doing the most mundane things as they're passing their time to go about the day. So my score ended up being a 3, but I don't necessarily mean that as like a knock on anything here. It fits and it works for what they needed. Yeah.
You bring up a scene that reminds me of a character that I have questions about. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to ask that question. Anytime we see the coven, there is the one character who never speaks with glasses.
Yep.
Who kills herself.
Yeah.
What's that about?
This is literally a question we both had, like my wife and I, at the end of watching it this time around. I thought I read somewhere that she was like the meekest of all the witches. And so every time a dance is happening and that person's being hurt, it wears on her more than any of the other ones. And she finally kills herself is what I'm taking it as, where she just couldn't handle it anymore, like feeling their pain and knowing what they're going through. But why don't we give a little bit more of this character if we're going to have this just epic scene out of nowhere where she just stabs herself in the neck?
And yes, and we get those, we get those moments of focusing on her after significant events, but it's not portrayed very clearly. Like you had to read into that a little bit.
Right.
I think that's a great idea.
Right.
I would have loved to see it, like, even if it's the ever so melodramatic of like, you know, give me something.
Or I mean, you could even do something like when they're like having the cops and they're like making like them do like embarrassing things while they're under like a trance. Have her like leave the room because it bothers her, or have her like just being bothered where there's little thing. I mean, or you could do what you said, or you could easily do like a little dialogue where it's like, there's something up. Like, we don't know if she's been able to handle this type of stuff anymore. And then I'm like, all right. And then just throwaway line.
Yeah. Because ultimately that was another character that I forgot about in the characters. That I was like,
she gets lost in the shuffle real easy.
Yeah.
Yes. But we get a really, like, her stabbing herself in the neck is a visceral moment in the story. But in the end, I was like, who was she? You know? So, okay, that answers my question on that. Before we jump into the next category, I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording. And I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you are thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's average customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. So let's dive into the next category. So then diving in to editing and special effects. Oh, guys.
Yeah. So
this
just
is
to
segue.
To segue from our unknown witch of the coven who offs herself. So special effects, man, that knife, it looked like just a butter knife, and she just really just jams it in there and goes back for seconds. And the spurt, the PSI that just came, dude, just she see it right in that right spot, man.
Yep.
That looked fantastic. I was just like, it did. Real. Woo! I mean, that's just one of many of those visceral scenes that you're talking about. Because like even when the very first one that really gets you with Olga and the dance in the glass room, so intense. Yeah. So intense. Just the way you see the shift, the broken ribs from a twist, the distending of the jaw when she's against the glass. oh man, some of that, dude, man, that stuff got me. Once I saw that, and I was like, woo, we are in it now. Oh yeah, I smell what you're stepping in. Let's get with it.
That scene is hard to watch.
It was
brutal.
Oh, but it was still so intense.
Yes.
Like, man, I was worried about it being such a long film. It's like, when you told me like the original was on like an hour and a half, I was like, what the,
Right.
Because the original didn't have Dr. What's-His-Face in it.
Yeah, Dr. Kemper, yeah. A little add-on there. But, man, there was so much cool stuff. Mm-hmm. But I will say, when you see that presence of the witch magic going on, your real little shifty brush light kind of things, I wasn't really digging that as an effect.
I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't either. When death shows up.
Is that what that character was? That creature was? I wasn't really certain if that was like a summoned spirit by Mother Superiorum, or if that was like another like old bloody corpse thing she just summoned from bowels. I wasn't really sure.
When I paused it on Prime and we get that X-ray thing on the side, it said that was death.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
I like that Amazon does that. It's kind of nice sometimes.
Little clues for you. Thanks, Amazon. Right?
I'm not going to pause the movie every scene change, but I'm tempted sometimes.
For sure. So editing, you could have edited out about the 40, 45 minutes, that Dr. Kemper stuff, whatever, all his little backstories and side shenanigans. But I like a lot of the transitions and some of the swiftness of the movement that we had going through certain scenes, especially with that enhancement of the music going on. I think that really gave, even though it was a long film, it gave it a lot of driving force in certain parts versus the slowness of seeing Dr. Kemper kind of tittle along doing whatever. You had some weird odd contrast between fast movement and then that slowness there.
Yeah, the contrast is an interesting point.
But overall, man, I gave it a 4 just because there was so much going on between Mother Marcos, death, and everything else that was going on with the girls, especially towards the end. I don't want to take up all the time on it, so I'm, Tim, you get it. You say your piece, man. You can add to that however you like.
Okay. So this movie rubbed me wrong in the opening scene for editing. Okay. In the opening scene with Chloe Moretz as Patricia, it is 6 minutes long and contains, because I decided to count it on second watch, at least 140 cuts in 6 minutes. That's, if I did my math correct, that's somewhere close to one cut every 2.5 seconds for the opening scene.
Okay, yeah.
And I get kind of the directorial choice of like, she's kind of frantic.
Yeah.
So the camera is cutting frantically, but it bothered me when we would have two angles on the same thing and sometimes in mid-sentence cut to like, oh, that much different. It wasn't a significant difference. Yeah. And sometimes we cut to an inanimate object. And I'm fine with all of that. It was too much too fast to start off the film. It's one, Jonathan, we've been doing this for a while, and I hate fast cuts. I like those long takes. I like long shots that I feel where I get these quick takes showing us like, oh, the coffee table in the corner of the room. I'm like, okay, I get it. But the long take can still show you the coffee table in the room in relation to the acting going on. Yeah. That opening scene bothered me a lot. It does calm down after that. It does calm down. There's not as many, but it was enough that on my first watch, I was like, when I clip scenes for this, I'm going to count how many times it cuts.
Oh, God.
And I did. And it's 140 times in 6 minutes, which is, and there are some of them that are so fast, I might have missed one. But that aside, like you said, the stabbing in the neck, amazing. The dance contortionist breaking herself, I was uncomfortable. there are two types of effective horror. One of those is fun, and one of those is disturbing.
Yeah.
If you're not one of those two things, you're worthless. That was disturbing.
Yep.
Like her getting thrown apart and twisted disturbed me. I was uncomfortable watching it. It was effective, which makes it all the more disappointing when we get to the final act and we have CGI blood spewing under a red filter. That scene was so upsetting because it's like a heavy metal music video from the 90s. It's even got like the slowed down graininess to it, and that scene fell apart for me in a way that was so dissatisfying. It left a bad taste in my mouth, and it was all the choice in how they did it. Even the second Tilda Swinton's head goes 3/4 of the way off and it's just CGI blood spewing everywhere, I was disappointed.
Was that CGI? I thought that was like effect. Like,
I think it was a mix. But there was
definitely like there was more natural splatter to some of that. I wasn't really sure.
There was some. It was just once those heads started exploding later, I was like, cool idea. It's CGI, and that ruins it for me. It hurts me inside because the rest of it was very good. I mean, that Olga getting contorted into a mess is one of the most uncomfortable scenes I've seen. It's fantastic. And then I felt like the ending went for shock value versus that visceral feeling of Olga. I would have almost had something more visceral and less gratuitous in that final act. So I docked a little bit for bringing in the CGI blood spurts. Just the quick cuts, I didn't dock it too hard for that, but it did bother me. The CGI bothered me far more. But the red filter at the end, and I get there are moments, so I try not to compare it to the original, but there are moments that it's like, hey, we're remaking an Argento film. And so the red filter I thought was kind of an homage to like, hey, remember the original? Like, we're going to cover everything in a color. And then there are moments also with Tilda Swinton's character where we get purple lights on her during dream sequences, which I thought I worked for the dream sequences. So I gave it a 3. I'm being critical. I gave it a 3 because there were some excellent scenes, and then I thought the end just devolved into shock value over quality. So yeah, I don't know how to compare that ending. It had the same kind of bleak ending as Hereditary.
Yeah.
Where it's not a happy ending, but Hereditary I thought earned that ending. This one I didn't think earned it as much. And Hereditary is just a masterclass on just fucking you up. And this one I thought it went a little too shock for me, but I did give it a 3. I thought it was good overall. So
yeah, I'm actually coming in right in the middle of your guys' scores here, where it's I always forget about it. I don't know if it's just I black it out or not, but that opening sequence is so like frantic, which I agree is that you can, cut that many cuts in half and still get the same exact thing and still present that she is so manic and that she's like freaking out. He's trying to calm her down and setting the stage for everything and whatnot. But I am glad that it kind of settles in. I think for me as well, I always kind of contribute editing to like the pacing of the film as well, where I do think that, I didn't even realize that the Kemper stuff was 45 minutes, and that would literally get it down to almost the exact runtime of what the original one is. So I think that if you kind of trim some of that down, get it down to like even like 2 hours, I think this just runs smoother with a lot of the stuff that we're keeping in there. And it is a bummer because I did notice some of the CGI in that final scene, just because you built up so much goodwill before that with everything going so practical and everything being so visceral, that I ended up coming in with a 4 just because of, I think there's just a few things you can tweak here and there. And then you've got something that just runs, like even closer to being perfect.
Yeah. The Mother Marcos herself looks fantastically disturbing with that baby hand on her arm flapping. That was messing me up.
She had some weird hangles and dangles off her food. Who knows what?
That's Tilda Swinton in makeup. That's amazing. That's amazing.
You know how you said though you weren't sure how to compare it to with like the ending, the gratuitousness, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen The Lords of Salem?
Rob
Zombie film.
Yep.
I have not.
Check that one. The ending. There's actually, when I think about it, there's some similarities kind of in concept between The Lords of Salem versus this, right, David?
Yeah, that's true.
And once you see the ending of that film, then I think that would give you some comparison to this one.
Yeah.
I believe, 'cause the end of that movie is batshit. The end of that movie is absolutely batshit crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the visual.
Oh my god!
I think the visuals at the end of this movie are fantastic.
Yeah.
Even like on second watch, Death with the hands creeping across the floor looks so good. I don't get it. Why is he like creeping and then suddenly standing? Okay, but it looks so good. And then Death himself or herself, because I think it's actually played by a female, looks fantastic.
Yeah.
It's one of the better representations of Death on screen. The ending, even I don't so much mind the red. It was when everything started getting blurry and fuzzy that I was like, okay. Just going around popping heads left and right. So the script then.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of dead spots when it comes to dialogue, but that's okay because, I believe it's for effect. Mm-hmm. But there are some lines in this movie though that you don't quite expect, I don't think. Mm-hmm. Like when Susie is talking with Madame Blanc in her room, I think this is like right after she tried to do the dance and Olga got twisted up and then all self-pretzeled. Mm-hmm. She was asking her about what she felt, right? And Susie says, it felt like what I think it must feel like to fuck.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I was not expecting that out of this Mennonite girl. Yeah. Like, what? It kind of like really threw me off when I first heard that.
Yeah.
And then some of the following discussions they have throughout the film, it's pretty interesting. Some of it seems kind of inane, in small parts when the girls are hanging out, running around, even some of the discussions that with like the witches in their little like teacher's lounge kind of part of the academy, while they're still discussing like witch work and what. There was just so many different things. But then there was Dr. Kemperer. He had a couple of lines that I think really stood out for me. He's talking to the police about Patricia going missing and trying to see what's going on. And they're like, well, it's just a bunch of dancers and whatever. They're just kind of brushing it off. But he says they are professional performers. Illusion is their craft. Which kind of it's like more context could kind of allude to them being witches and whatnot, even though they don't understand that. And then they were talking about feelings and stuff, and he says love and manipulation share the same house. And that's kind of like a deep thought because people use love to manipulate people, and then people just manipulate people out of love. And it's like a twisted kind of thing that goes on there. And you kind of think about that in the ways of like how the witches work, they're twisted, even though they have their love, for the coven each other. And then, Madame Blanc and like being so enamored in this way with Susie, it was really crazy, man. And then let's see, I think there's like one other. Yeah, like towards the end, like Susie was like, "Why is everyone so ready to think the worst is over?"
Yes, that one stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of lines in there that I think had a lot of impact, and man, I really liked the way they set that up, despite some of the small dead parts of it. I think I give it a 4. I think that's a pretty great assessment, for a score.
Okay, You raised some good points. There are some good little lines in here.
Yeah.
The script is not really one of the spots that I thought was a big weakness. Mm-hmm. I do think there are some great, even like Madame Blanc says, movement is never mute. It is a language. It's a series of shapes written in the air. Like it's kind of poetic. There's a nice flow to it. in the way this film was written. I'm trying to remember because I didn't write this down, but on second watch, it stood out to me. When the witches trick Kemper into coming close to the building, and they say it's probably my favorite line of the movie because it's just so malicious. They yell at him when a woman comes to you and claims to see these things. I'm bastardizing it terribly. When a woman comes to you and claims to see these things, you tell her she's delusional. You don't believe her. And that line, I was like, man, these women are nasty. This coven is nasty. And I think that line is so good. But yeah, you raised some good points. There are a lot of dead spots. Like, I don't know why we spent so much time focusing on her jumping when, like, I the first time watching it, I'm thinking this is going to be part of the ritual at the end. I'm thinking it's significant because we spend so much time. You have to jump. You have to jump. You have to jump.
Right.
And then it ends up being nothing. So there were these moments that I was like, why was this so heavily emphasized in the script? Because you have these fantastic lines sprinkled in.
Yeah.
We don't need the scenes with the jumping at all. There's no amount of belief or physical prowess that she needs to become Mother Suspiriorum in the end. So they don't really serve that purpose. So that makes it, and I'm thinking out loud as I say this, like it's just coming to me. But because there are some great lines, Kemper has a lot of great lines, but I gave it a 3. I thought the script was good. It had some really good lines, and then just moments that I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know? So, and I think most of that is my problems with the story. I think if it all funneled to the conclusion a little better, I would feel better about the script.
Yeah, I mean, kind of agreeing with a lot. There's some just great lines, and there's some of them that are just so vicious sometimes where you don't necessarily expect a character to say that to somebody, especially like calling out Kemper to be like, they're just kind of also paraphrasing it, is being like, if they're delusional, they come to you and you don't believe them. Like that is just parallels so many things that happen like even today. And
yes.
I mean, and then there's also just some of the other ones where, I mean, I think actually one of the things that I like a lot is the dialogue that kind of keeps going back and forth where the witches who side with Marcos are like, she needs Susie now. Like Susie, like she has to have her. And they almost just use the idea that the only thing I can think with the jumping thing is that she doesn't want to because she keeps writhing around on the floor because Marcos is in that like closet underneath her and they can kind of feel each other through the floor. But I mean, you don't necessarily need that much of the jumping stuff to establish that. I mean, you really just need to have them arguing like they get after the fact where it's like, you need to jump. And she's like, just have her be like, but wouldn't it be more of just me kind of doing this thing on the ground where and she explains herself and it's like, okay, that's all you need. Like, we don't need to sit there and watch all this stuff to play out anymore. And there's just some things in the script that and with a story that just doesn't get fleshed out. So that's what kind of held me back from giving it like a higher score, just because I think even just a little line here and there, or just show us something just a little bit more, I think everything just comes together a little bit better, because there are a lot of questions that people have at the end of it where you kind of go off and you might do research. And I'm not always a big fan if I have to go off and do research after a movie, unless there's like mythology that doesn't necessarily need to be used, but just deepens your enjoyment. It's when I'm left with questions that I kind of have issues. So I ended up coming in with a 4 as my score on this one as well.
Yeah.
Right on.
I might be tempted to change my score higher because as we were talking, I was thinking some of my favorite moments in the film were actually shared between Sarah and Susie.
Mm-hmm.
I think the script does a really good job of establishing an intimacy between the two. It's not romantic, but it's definitely like care about each other. There's this sisterly development that I'm like, you know what? That they did a really good job of establishing that in the film. So
Well, yeah,
I do appreciate that.
Yeah, they did pretty good with that sense of closeness, because like when she gets in bed with her after Susie has that nightmare, she's like, "Oh, I've never slept in bed with another person except my sister." It's like, well, we're sisters now.
Yeah.
You know, just to kind of help reassure her, give her that sense of comfort, you know, which is pretty cool.
I think there's something beautiful about that, honestly. So I'm tempted. I might go 3.5.
Halvesies.
I'll go 3.5. All right. So the acting on this.
Acting, yeah. So there was just, I mean, when it comes to acting, dude, like Olga, man, she was deep on that. She was deep in that pain.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like her going manic.
He sells it.
Yes.
And just, she really sold it with that getting twisted into a self pretzel like nobody's business. Chloe Moretz Grace, her sense of frantic delusion at the beginning, like seeing how hyped up she was and just so out of it. I've never really seen her do anything like that as far as that kind of a role, but I mean, it seemed so. Part of it was kind of believable. Part of it seemed kind of hacky-ish. I don't know.
Yeah,
I would ass, but
I would agree.
But it still was okay. She had very little time on screen, so there wasn't really much to really see from her as far as the acting, so it doesn't really matter.
I loved her as Hit Girl. So
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, kicks ass through as a Sunday as Hit Girl for sure. Dr. Kemperer, like I forgot that was Tilda Swinton in there. Like, you know, and like beginning I was trying to remember that, but I eventually lost focus of it entirely. And the fact that she was playing 3 different roles was pretty incredible. Mother Marcos, I mean, anybody could have really done that. Didn't really have to do that as a third role necessarily. And why you couldn't find a dude to play Kemperer, I don't know. But still, the fact that she did all 3 of those roles, still pretty sick. Madame Blanc, dude, like Tilda Swinton's always been so amazing in her craft. And her as Madame Blanc and like the way she portrays the seriousness and the depth of trying to be like a professional dance studio and how important it is to move in these ways for this dance, for Volk or Volk folk, something like that. You know, trying to really stress how important it is because unknowing to them, it's part of the ritual to be able to move this way and to do this. I think that kind of emphasizes that need for the jumping because you see that part where the one dancer who shows her how to do the series of jumps does the pressing and the hands and the feet. And then next thing you know, as she's doing her thing, that performer ends up like just losing, seizuring out and shit eventually. So it's like she took a gift from that one to give to her to make her better at this, to be able to perform this essence part of the ritual, which they then do later in the floor in that performance. You just don't really see much focus on her doing those jumps because they're more of an aerial view over top, you know, before everything else goes down. And then Mia Goth for Susie though, man, or for Sarah, man, her sense of just kind of like brushing stuff off, like you were talking about earlier, Tim, and then going into like her paranoia and then the fear and then the discovery and panic that she went through before she ends up getting taken over, what I assume was by Madame Blanc, I guess, and then having her come back up to perform the rest of the dance, you know, against her will, clearly being taken over control with, and that
she was bewitched.
There you go. Yeah, she was bewitched, as it were. And her sitting there looking at Susie the whole time when she's moving around and trying so hard to break free from the grip that she's in order to stop the ceremony. You know, I think she did a fantastic job with that. I mean, she really pulled it on that. Everyone else, though, was pretty cool. Was pretty good. Mostly serviceable. Some good reaction with a lot of the witches in the coven. Even though you don't really get much of anything out of the mousy witch who offed herself, you know, butter knifed herself left and right, you know. 4. I think 4 is pretty good. Everyone seemed to play a pretty good role. I
do think you didn't mention the main character of the film.
Wait, did I? Wait, what?
Did you talk about Susie?
Oh, geez. Oh, no. Sorry.
Because you're going to lead into my point of she's fine. She's fine. Because I agree with it. Tilda Swinton knocks this movie out of the park.
Yes.
Tilda Swinton is, first of all, she's a little too, from a direction standpoint, she's a little too on the nose for a witch. You know, she's always wearing these gray, drab, long clothes and just long hair that's down to her waist and nothing done with it.
But that could be a chic style for the time, though.
Very emotional,
especially with it being a dance academy kind of thing. Artsy people, eccentric,
Very witchy.
Okay.
But she was great. And then the doctor, she is incredible at. So they actually didn't let the cast know that Tilda was playing the doctor.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
She would arrive in the makeup and play, and they basically told the cast and crew that it was this elderly German man that played the role. And so they didn't know they were playing opposite of Tilda Swinton until after. It went so far at one point that they were going to say that the actor passed away before the premiere to explain his absence at the red carpet. But eventually Luca was like, that's a little cruel. Yeah. We'll let it slide. But they made a fake name that was that, explained it away. But I think it's super cool. I wish the character mattered. Yeah.
Lutz Ebersdorf, as he was credited as.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's just one of those things that I think it's super cool. She did a fantastic job. I don't know why, ultimately, but like you said, playing the three different roles, she's so talented. She's incredible. Mm-hmm. I do think this is Mia Goth's standout performance for me. We mentioned the Ty West trilogy. Third one's not out yet. It's probably out by the time this airs. But she plays like the opposite personality in those films. She's kind of arrogant, definitely an X. She's kind of arrogant. She thinks she's the shit, And then Pearl, she plays this humble farm girl. And in this one, it's a humble farm girl, but it's different. Yeah. It is different. And we go on that journey of her basically becoming fearful. And she does so good. And when she shows up at that dance, just glassy-eyed, that is more unsettling than anything Susie does. I think that scene kills it. And my wife watched this with me, and she just goes, I just don't think I care for Dakota Johnson. And because... she's fine in this movie. I couldn't tell you that there was a problem with it, but she's kind of one note the entire film. It's very much kind of the same the entire way. Or is a redhead? I didn't really recognize her at first, to be honest. I was like, oh, that is Dakota. Okay. But the Chloe, you were being nice at the beginning. I thought Chloe was pretty rough. Chloe was pretty rough in that opening scene. So I don't doubt her talent. I just think that scene's a little weird. So I give it a 4. Tilda brings everything up in this film. The Coven of Witches is actually fantastic. I almost wish they would have had more screen time. I think the biggest complaint is that Dakota Johnson never really felt for her, so I couldn't really dive in on Dakota's performance. However, she's surrounded by great performances.
Yeah, I would agree there. Because, I really think the only time... I came into this having seen her in, the 50 Shades movies ahead of this, where I was like, she's I was nervous to come see this movie for the first time because she's not good in those movies, and I'm like,
oh, okay.
And I mean, it's definitely like the Twilight effect, where it's like you just have bad scripts and these people doing their roles, and then because I like her in the first half of this when she's like very just nervous, very just kind of like timid around all these people because they all have world experiences and she has none. It's when she kind of gets arrogant that I kind of just forget about her. Outside of when she has her great climactic scene at the end, that's not even her. That's everything that's going down around her. For me, Tilda Swinton's performance, as we've all been saying here, just kind of knocks it out of the park. And that's who I kind of look at as being like the true star of this movie. And I mean, it might just because of the 3 roles that she does play, that she does all of them. Marcos is what it is. But like the other 2 are so good, whether or not like they, progress the story or if they're actually just secondary characters that she carries it. And like I said, Mia Goth, she's great in this one as well. So I end up giving this a 5 only because I'm doing my rounding rules where at 4.5, I round up to what I learned in math class. So that's where I'm coming in with my score.
That's fair.
The one thing that gets me when I'm doing like Letterboxd, I'm like, man, people are going to think I like this movie more than I'm liking it, but this is how I round everything. So
I would rather be forgiving than overly critical. That's why I'm struggling with this movie.
Fair.
I'm struggling. Okay, so from the acting on to the direction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with direction, even though you hate all those quick cuts at the beginning, I do like how they did that for effect, just to kind of roll on with that sense of her going crazy.
Yeah,
it kind of helped emphasize that. The slow parts of that slow deliberation and meaningfulness of Dr. Kemper throughout his parts for the most. And then just some of like the way they ran those shots throughout the academy were pretty cool. Like some of those scenes where you see the light come on from up top and then there's the stairwell coming from the catacombs from under up into the academy. Some of the shots like where at the beginning where Susie gets to the academy and she's talking to Miss Tanner. And then as they're going further into the school, you see Madame Blanc there staring at her from afar behind the glass and getting that kind of fade shot as it kind of pans in or like zooms into her staring at them. And then you still see the reflection of them in the glass.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool. Then there's that part where Susie and Sarah are sneaking into the office at the front of the building. Mm-hmm. Sorry, first off, you ain't sneaking. You're not fooling nobody with those boots going on clack, 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 out loud as shit out there. Okay, that's not fooling nobody. Whatever.
But they're also super loud in the office. They're just like opening up things and like slamming them shut. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, everybody knows what you're doing right now.
Well, the fact that it's sneakier.
Yeah, but with that, even though like Susie goes into the next room,
right?
They're making all this noise in the office, and then she goes in there, and the witches are got those cops in the trance. Messing with them, having their shits and giggles, whatever. Like, how do the witches not hear them? Do they just cackling too much to hear all that?
What
and then
the hell was going on in that scene?
Dude, they were having the time of their lives. Cops do with his pants down, his hangle dangle out, and the witches get the hook. They're poking his wiener with the hook.
What is that about?
I don't know. They're just like playing with some dangle with a hook. I don't know. About to, hook up a worm for some fishing. I don't know. But it was so twisted, but kind of weird. And the fact that Susie sees them, comes back, and doesn't say anything to Sarah about, hey, you would not believe this crazy shit I just saw in here. Like, oh my God.
They're poking that cop's dick back there.
Poking it with a hook, man. Like, what the hell?
What's going on?
Leave his worm alone. But there's just like so many weird things like that, and then some of like the views you get and like some of the direction with where like when they're doing the performance towards the end, everyone's in like the red cords and stuff. Some of the way they shot that with a lot of those overhead views and kind of back contrast where you see kind of into the crowd that's there. There were so many different angles, and with the way they moved around everything, I thought was really, really well done. So I'm going to be kicking it at a 4. Yeah, a 4.
All right. So, spoiler alert. I know these episodes come out the 13 nights leading up to Halloween, but we recorded them in advance. And previously, Jonathan and I recorded Dirty Dancing. So it's just interesting to compare a dancing movie in this dancing movie.
Yeah.
And while I might just prefer the way Dirty Dancing was filmed during the dance segments, I appreciate what Luca did in this because Dirty Dancing made the dancing look beautiful. This does not look pretty at all. This dancing feels more, like I said earlier, it feels more ritualistic, and that was definitely intentional.
Yeah.
You know, that was definitely what he was going for, I assume. Because that's what's conveyed. It's what's most effective, and it works. You know, I don't think any part of this movie has, from my total lack of understanding of the dance world, something I would consider beautiful dancing. It is very, it's almost tribal in an element. It definitely feels like a ritual being performed. And I think that's awesome. I think the way he filmed it is super cool. I love a lot of the overhead shots. I'm a sucker for overhead shots. I love overhead shots. I love long overhead shots. John Wick 4, king right now. That overhead shot,
bro.
That overhead shot is amazing. But Hitchcock has quite a few of them as well. But some of these dance overhead shots were very cool. Just the way the lighting was done during that final dance performance is awesome. I loved, even though like I was looking for a thematic reason to have it, I love the use of mirrors in this movie. Lots of mirrors and windows, reflections. And I thought there might be something deeper there. I didn't see it. It might still be there. But there's a lot of use of mirrors and reflections that's really cool, really well done. My biggest complaint, and this is the first Luca film I've seen, so I don't know if this is indicative of his style or not, but at times with his quick cuts, and especially his quick cuts to character-less shots, almost feel like a slideshow of stills versus a movie.
Okay.
And the stills themselves are beautiful, and they're something I'd love to see. But it brings a disjointed feel to it where I feel like I'm watching a slideshow, not a film.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I gave it a 4. I'm right there with you, Jonathan. I think there's a lot of it's a visual style that he was going for. And I think he succeeded in that. So this is one where I'm trying to be objective, whether I liked it or not.
Yeah.
I think it looked good. I was critical of that first scene, but there are a lot of cool like shots of like, I'm not sure why, picture frame in books. Cool. It looks really good. It looks aesthetically pleasing. I like it. Don't know why it was there for half a second, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So that's where the dancing is good. I'll save the rest of my thoughts. I think this movie falls apart in the third act, in the final act, but I gave him a 4. I thought he did a great job. And I especially I don't want to go too much into Argento's, but he made this his vision of the story. There are a lot of choices that I think were very intentional to avoid comparison to the original. And whether you like those choices or not, I can see why they were made. So I give them a 4 for that.
I was going to say, that actually kind of leads into what, like, the big thing for me is that I'm glad he did not try to, like, out Argento in making a remake of an Argento film, because I definitely think that would have gotten this eviscerated from the start. Instead of going, like, bright, vivid colors, you go drab and just how bleak Berlin was at the time, with like the wall being right there and just everything is so gray outside of like certain things with the Coven. So I'm so glad that he did that. Now I've seen one other movie from Luca. I believe he did Bones and All. And that movie does feel kind of similar with how they can, I mean, that one takes place more in like the outskirts of cities in the Midwest, I believe in the 80s. So you definitely get that type of thing. I almost feel like what you said with the slideshow, he does do that well, where he sets up these different little cities that this couple goes to. So I definitely think it's a stylistic choice that he enjoys doing. And I appreciate it just because, I mean, even in this movie, how you can make a bleak looking Berlin just look so beautiful with each shot, where I'm like, okay, like I feel like we're here. I feel like you're doing this. And then how he frames and shoots the dance sequences is great. So I came in right there with you guys as a 4, just because I think he does very well with what he's doing here. There's just some things here and there that I might not just love. So I can't give him a perfect score on it, but definitely it's really good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one other thing, a couple things I wanted to point out also. The dream sequences, even that some of the flashes and the things that you see and how twisted some of that imagery was pretty intense in itself, even in the short spurts you get during those dreams, between the crazy witchcraft stuff and then the flashbacks to her mother and abuse and all that stuff was, I think, good emphasis with the contrast of like who she is at the start versus who you see her become at the end. It's pretty sweet. And then
we also get most of our callbacks to the original film during those dream sequences.
Okay. All right.
So that's something for you to keep an eye out for.
So even though in some of the stuff you see online talking about how it, how pointless the time period was for the setting, I think with it being this secretive dance academy, I think setting it during the 70s in Germany, the way when you look at everything else, I'm not sure if you noticed this, Tim, since we both went to AI and all, but you see that kind of Bauhaus style.
Oh yeah,
in a lot of stuff, very prominent in the poster you see on the wall. When Susie is standing against that black poster, and the way the letterings are arranged with Madame Blanc and this and that, Studio Times and all this stuff. This had that real deep Bauhaus kind of style for the time. And I thought that was really awesome and kind of a great touch. And maybe that's why partly they set it in that time, because of how that style kind of has that kind of punch to it for the time and then the drabness of the scenes.
It's also in the title cards and credits. And it's one of my favorite parts of this movie is those elements being from the graphic design world. I love it. But yeah. Okay. So on to, guys, I was super harsh on this one. Persuade me. You can change my mind. It Factor, cultural significance.
So I'm just gonna come out and say it right out. I stuck this at a 3. I wouldn't say there was anything too critical. I think it gives kind of like this alter aspect of the seriousness and intensity that dancers experience in these academies, especially back at those times versus how things are usually run nowadays. So I think when people see this, it's a stark contrast, especially for people who actually are in dance. And then how soft yet how raw interpretive dance can be in this way. I think has a big standout point to it as well. Other than that, I've read online that they were talking about how it being set in Germany was supposed to make it as kind of like a guilt piece kind of thing, which I don't really get that. It seems kind of like a dumb.
Yeah, because that's also the Holocaust stuff brought in that is kind of this guilt trip that doesn't really serve the story. Yeah,
especially when Madame Blanc talks about how like it's been 40 years since such and such, and especially with that dance they did, the Volk being like, what was it? They created that dance in like what 1948 they said or something.
I think something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So, it'd been around. So it was kind of odd in that way, but overall I thought it was okay with the relevance with like terrorism and, people trying to be free and escape the separation that they had between East and West Germany post Cold War. Like I said, it wasn't overly significant. It wasn't too anything that really brought attention to too much of anything. Not really relevant today necessarily, maybe. But so, yeah, I think 3 is fair.
Okay. You're significantly more generous than I am. You again, I love hearing your takes on the It Factor because we come from totally different perspectives on It Factor. Those things that you like, I'm sitting here realizing It Factor was made apparently for movies like this, because I never would have put the cultural parts of Berlin, which seem to have no effect on the story of this film whatsoever as contributing to the it factor. So I think that's totally fair. I came at it as this movie was a box office failure that had planned sequels, and due to the devastating box office returns, those sequels will 99% chance they're never going to happen.
Boo.
It was a box office failure, but also it came out in 2018. That was the year you and I graduated from AI.
Yeah.
Oldest of our class, but I didn't know this movie existed in 2018. You know, it didn't know it happened. This is a remake of one of the most significant horror films of the 70s, and I didn't know it existed. And that's problematic. So ultimately, the only reason I knew this film existed was because of looking up Mia Goth from later films and looking up Chloe Moretz to see if she was still doing anything. And then found out, hey, yeah, she's in this one. Mia Goth was in this one. Tilda Swinton's super talented. I don't seek out her films though.
Yeah.
Not something I do. I've never, like I said, this was my first Luca film. So yeah. So because of that, man, I feel so bad. I give it a 0 because I barely knew this film existed. So I do, like I said, I genuinely appreciate Jonathan shedding some light on the cultural issues the film addresses. So because of that, it raises some good points. And I think he's trying to draw some parallels there. They're a little too open-ended, but I'll bring it up to a 1. I'm going to bring it up to a 1 because I felt too harsh. But I had to box office numbers and the fact that this film is not well known. I had to give it a pretty low it factor.
I don't think you're wrong though in that assessment from how you're looking at it, because this one I had known about just because I had already been doing, like, for my podcast, doing like end of year lists. So I ended up seeing this in the theater in 2018 because I knew it was coming out and I wanted to make sure that I had saw it to see where it would fall in my top 10 and everything like that. But this one is super divisive. Like, I have some podcasting buddies who absolutely love this, like 10 out of 10 to them. Like, they think it's right there with the original one as being like one of their favorite horror movies of all time. There's other people that absolutely just hate this movie, where they are like, they love the original and they're just like, oh man, like, why would you remake this? Like, you're not going to do this, and that, and the other. So I end up giving it a 3 just because it's so divisive that I feel like it almost gives it that weird, like, cultural significance where it is like, you have this army on this side that loves it, this on the other side that absolutely just hate it. And anytime it gets brought up, it just becomes a battle. If there is both sides of it on that type of thing who just absolutely are on either side of it, which is just sometimes hilarious, where I'll just be listening to people debate about it. And I'm just like, man, like, I almost wish I was part of this.
That's totally fair. Totally fair. It's like bringing up a Star Wars movie.
Right.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Total sense. All right, was that all you had for that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So overall, given our, like I say, this is the moment where we do, most of what you see of the total, 10 out of 10s or whatever. This is that score for us. How entertained were you?
Well, let me tell you, buddy. Okay. I was just, at first I didn't know what to think, and it being a dance film and all, and it totally blew away my expectations. And I would definitely watch this again. I'm all for that. I would definitely tell people about this movie and how raw it is throughout a lot of it. And I'm kicking it with a hardcore 9, dude. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. I actually think this film would do better today than it did in 2018. I think the movie-going audience, A24 Studios has kind of paved the way for movies like this.
Yes.
Watching this movie, I often was like, this is like an A24 film. You know, this is an artist's vision of a movie. And I think more people would be open to it today. However, for me, I can't say that I ever want to see this film again. So unfortunately for me, it does come down to the final climactic scene and how unsatisfied I was, or dissatisfied I was, in how they brought these elements together. I said at the beginning, my wife and I were totally with this movie 3/4 of the way in. And then the second she's like, oh, I'm Mother Suspiriorum, and heads start popping, I was like, what are we watching? What just happened? And as cool as it is, I just felt let down in how I got there. And so I have to question, when I was doing my entertainment value, I was like, I was on board for a good chunk of it. That's where the 4 comes from. But ultimately, I'm not sure the 2.5-hour journey is worth it for me again if I'm that dissatisfied in the ending.
Yeah.
Now, I do see this could be a movie that I would change my entertainment value later, because I do think this is a movie that repeated watches reveal more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
So I definitely think this is one of those movies. It's just one of those where it's going to be a year or two or quite a significant time before I want to sit down and watch this again.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah. No, I mean, kind of going along with you. Being the third time that I've seen this, I literally watch this. It feels like every 2 to 3 years. And I agree with you. This isn't one that I could watch every year, or like if I had to watch it twice in a year for like, say somebody else was like, hey, do you want to jump on this show and talk about this? I would have a little bit of a struggle watching it too close together, just because that 2.5-hour runtime is something that is like, man, I've got to find a way that I'm going to go ahead and carve out this much time with my busy schedule to kind of do that. But with watching it every so often, like, I mean, the original one I can watch as of right now. I don't know how it always happens, but I watch it about once a year and I'm like, oh, like I'm excited. Like I'm going to go ahead and I'll watch this one. This one, I think every couple of years, like, and I also kind of rate after each viewing, it can go up and down just kind of depending on how I feel. Like if I end up watching this again, like a month from now, I think my score would go down just because I wouldn't be emotionally invested in watching it that close together. But if I watch it again in like 2 years, my score would probably be, it stayed the same because I've had so much of gaps in between each watches. So I end up coming in for myself as a 9 on this one as well, under that like caveat that I watch it with enough time in between watches.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Awesome. No, I'm genuinely glad that the two of you enjoyed this more than I did. I feel like I've been dragging Jonathan through some films he's not a big fan of. So this is, even though this was my choice, I still didn't enjoy it that much. But, yeah, I mentioned at the beginning, I'd never seen this one, and I'd actually put off the original. So I finished this one, and I could have told you. I'll wait. I'll wait till we talk about the original one. 6 days.
Yes.
6 days, and David will be back with us to talk about Dario Argento's Suspiria, and then we can dive into. This is one that. So we just did the first House of Wax film yesterday.
Yeah,
and this is one that, you know, both of those kind of reinterpret their original films.
Yeah.
This one draws more comparisons than House of Wax did. So I think we're going to have an interesting discussion in 6 days on what we think of these two together. So final scores overall, gentlemen, let's see.
Oh, yeah.
I am a 28.5 because of that. And then
for me, I'm sitting at a nice high horse of a 42.
I am at a 41.
Okay. So altogether, my wife actually scored this with me. Her comments at the end of it were that she is going to take an extra pill of her anxiety medication
Yeah, that's fair.
at the conclusion of the film. So that was,
Wow.
that was her. She calls it Boosperoni, because the actual medical term is very close to Boosperone, something like that. And so she calls it Boosperoni, and her exact words at the end were, "I'm going to eat a Boosperoni sandwich." So
dang.
that's what she had to say about this film. So altogether, averaging that out, we are 37. So 37 out of 50, 3.5 stars. My wife's score was 36, so that's why it was brought down quite a bit. She enjoyed it more than I did. This is more her type of film. But yeah, I'm excited to get into the original in 6 days.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually just kind of thought of something here.
Yeah.
What they could have done to cut down a lot of time and get rid of most of the Kemper bullshit.
Kemper.
not Kemper. We can still keep him in there a little bit for a small character, but they could have had, like, when they trick him into coming to the academy using the image of his wife Anka.
Yeah.
They could have used the image of Patricia to lure him instead.
Yeah.
And we could have cut out all of that extra backstory stuff.
You could have, yeah.
And saved a whole lot of time if they had just done that instead.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it would have had better flow to the movie versus all those slow parts with him tottering around, you know.
But then you miss the cameo of the original actress.
That's true. But
they could have found a different role for that.
Honestly, could have played one of the Coven members. Dude,
seriously.
That would be just as easy, and just have her. You don't even have to have her in every one of the Coven scenes either. Just have her in one of them where you just prominently focus on her and then move away, and you're fine.
Or she could have been the quiet one. She could have been the quiet witch that offed herself. She could have been that.
Here's a twist. Instead of Mother Marcos being a disgusting old hag, she was played by her. And she was actually...
I mean, I'm fine with that. Yeah,
yeah, she's actually just a beautiful lady down there and not a warped, withered disgustingness. I think there's something actually quite chilling about that. But what was I going to say about it? Dang it. Anyways. Any other final thoughts on this movie? You read up your little closing statements.
I think I'm good.
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, thank you for joining us. This was night 3 of 13 Nights of Halloween, joined by David from Journey with a Cinephile. So,
thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Awesome. So, he will be back in, if my math is correct, 6 days for... He's episode 3 and episode 9. So... There you go. And we will be talking about Dario Argento's, what many consider a masterpiece, certainly a classic.
I can't wait to see it.
Suspiria. So I can't wait for you to see it. I can't wait to watch it again. So we'll be back for that. In the meantime, we have 6 other days between then. You have your cocktail list going up on Instagram. If you're making those, we're putting the recipe. We're putting the instructions for mixing it. It's up there. It is paired to go with the movie. So
mix it up.
If the 5 of you who are watching make the drink, I want to see it. Tag us, post it on Instagram. I want to see how that thing looks. I want to see how it tastes. I'm going to try to make them. Can't make them all. There's quite a bit of ingredients. I understand if you can make them.
Well, maybe I'll try to make some of the ones you don't then.
Okay. Between us, we'll get it figured out. So, and let us know. The cocktail pairing is something new. I've never done that before. I just tried to add something to our 13 Nights of Halloween. So, yeah, I wanted to class the event up, but we had Ricky on the last episode, so there goes that. Love you, Ricky. All right, so we will see you tomorrow. With The Fly remake from 1986.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Travis from the nightclub is joining us for that one.
Oh, we're going to have so much fun on that, dude.
Yep. So, David, thanks again for joining us, and we will see you in 6 days.
Sounds good.